So nice to see you all here. This is the first in-person reading that SPT has put on in over 2 years. So it's really nice to see folks at 3 dimensions and talking to each other and all that. So I'm really excited for this event. I wanted to just do a few things and then get out of the way. Thanks to the lab, of course, for use of the space. To Kevin Lowe for running our live stream. I live stream. And Zoe, whose work is up in the space, put together the playlist we were listening to earlier. And thanks to all my board members who have helped out tonight and help in general in every area of this journey. And thank you all for being here. Super excited for this lineup. I'm going to invite up Anne Walsh, who is our host for the evening. At the end of the event, we're going to the Sycamore Bar, which is up Mission just past 17th, and there's some tables reserved outside on the patio, and you're all welcome to join us there. Okay, thanks. Anne Walsh.
Wow, it is so disorienting to be in a room with a lot of people and to be back at the lab in person, and but also sharing space with people that I love and haven't seen in a long time. So I'm super honored to have been asked by Sid and SPT to introduce the artists that were all gathered here tonight, IRL, to listen to. Thank you, Sid, and thank you, the lab, for inviting us here, and hello to all of you that are watching the screen version of us tonight, because there's a whole other ghost audience right now. I have to say, This is also my first experience of public mask speaking, or masked public speaking, you could say. And I'm realizing in this very moment just how much a part of my language is facial and physical. And so I'm feeling a little bit like there's like a whole track missing from this music that I'm making, without my face, alas. Okay, so my plan is to just say some things about the three folks who are gonna read tonight, and then also offer a little biographical information about them. And I'm gonna do that all in a row, so that then first Claudia, then Zoe, and then Camille can come up without being interrupted by a person standing up and introducing them. So I'm gonna go all at once now, and then the show will go on. I want the crack to crack. That's a line from Camille Roy's play, Sometimes Dead is Better. And I got to cry and shout it when Jocelyn Seidenberg produced the play as Poets Theatre in 2017, casting me as the Red Queen, an infanticide, tennis enthusiast, and ghost. I barely knew Camille's work then and felt incredibly lucky to return to the play with her, with Camille, Jocelyn, and the actors Howard Freed and Catherine Krim the following year at Project Artaud. With some new writing from Camille, we developed a fractured and choreographed version of it called Dead Sometimes. The erotics, the rage and the grieving, and really the erotics of rage and of grieving, are one of the refuges that Roy's work offered me then as an interpreter, and still do as a reader of her writing. Lately, reading Honey Mine has been the best, most reliable visit to the present moment I know. I'm suctioned into the total queer now of her voices, and I'm happy there. Camille Roy is a writer of fiction, poetry, and plays. Her newest collection, Honey Mine, came out from Nightboat in June 2021. And yes, this event is one of the well-deserved launches of its being in print and circulating in the world. Yay. Camille's previous books include Sherwood Forest from Future Poem and Cheap Speech, a play from Leroy Chapbooks, as well as Swarm from Black Star series. She co-edited Biting the Error, Writers Explore Narrative, and earlier books include The Rosy Medallions and Cold Heaven, plays from Leslie Scalapino's O books. Her recent work has been published in Americana and Open Space, SF MoMA's blog, and what I was going to write, what I have written here is no longer true, so I'm not going to say that. Just about teaching. COVID makes 2018 seem like really long ago, but that's actually the year that Claudia La Rocco invited me to interpret her then draft novel called And What's More, which was the final installment of her Olivia trilogy, and to do so in whatever way I might fancy. I joined with poet and artist Lena Joshi, talking with her across multiple screens, literally playing games and thinking together on the phone, by text, in Sports Basement, and over many, many hours in a audio recording booth. We were kind of living out And What's More, which itself was a story kind of dimensionally stretched across a multiverse of peripatetic, telepathic, hangouts and iterative beings. Grappling then with the question of like, how do we make a performance translating something that doesn't yet exist in its final form? We settled on something we called a draft audiobook, and we presented some of it here at the lab in 2019. And that's actually just one of several collaborations that I've had the joy as a friend and as an artist in doing with Claudia. So I'm grateful for that too. Her writing and thinking really, I feel like, offers me a way to like imagine that I could hear birdsong in a glitch. And to sort of evoke one of the images in Anne What's More, to like raise and carry a little family around in a fanny pack. Her experiments with live writing and improvisation are comic and majestic. I learned so much from Claudia's work, and I'm excited to hear what she'll share tonight. So, as I've intimated, Claudia's work moves between poetry, prose, and performance. Her publications include a collection of criticism and poems called The Best, Most Useless Dress, from Badlands Unlimited, the pamphlet Quartet, and the novel Petit Cadeau. With musician and composer Philip Greenleaf, she is Animals and Giraffes, an experiment in multidisciplinary improvisation, and she collaborates frequently with visual artists, dancers, musicians, and writers. Claudia has bylines in numerous publications, including Art Forum, Bonn, East of Borneo, and the New York Times. And she has recently been the editorial director of SF MoMA's art and culture platform, Open Space, since 2015. And RIP Open Space, which was one of, in my opinion, the best and most relevant things SF MoMA contributed to the Bay Area, a host to so many great writers and artists and thinkers over the years. And I grieve it's being a casualty of MoMA's cost-saving failure to recognize and honor a community it was nourishing. Finally, I'm brand new to ZH Leonard's work, but you guys are held in this space by it behind you if you haven't seen it. They're in some ways, they're graphic images, but they're also potentially legible as text. They're rubbings on interfacing cloth made with linotype ink, and essentially they've brought the locations in this neighborhood that called out to ZH, and she transferred them with that ink onto the interfacing material, and so in a sense, streets cracks and repairs. The cracks have cracked. Here they are in the space brought in from the outside. I think they're planning to talk about the work themselves tonight, so I'll just finish by saying that ZH is an interdisciplinary artist living here in San Francisco. Their texts, performances, and installations incorporate vocabularies of printmaking, fiber, cinema, and sound. They've exhibited visual work at the Roxy, Wolfman Books, and Artists Television Access. So that's our play. That's our personnel for the night. And thank you for inviting me. And Claudia will start.
Hi everyone. Start the timer, start the clock. Yeah, like it's the new genre to talk about how weird it is to do this, but it's so fucking weird. I don't have to worry about, like, usually I just worry about armpit sweat, and I'm like, fuck, mask sweat. Maybe the lighting's in my favor. Thank you, Sid, for holding this space, making it. That's such delicate and beautiful, necessary work. Thank you to the lab for letting us be in here. Thank you all for coming. And thank you to, it's such a pleasure to read for SPT. It's such a pleasure to be in the company of these beautiful artists, and it is especially to celebrate the work of Camille Roy, which is so important to me. And that, I was thinking of different, there's too long a list, but that play was like, that remains one of the chief moments. It's good to be in community with you all. I am going to read 4 short poems, and then I will run out the clock with an excerpt of what I'm working on now. Everything I'm going to read is from the last year, and some of it is from the last week, except for one piece. So the first thing, I wrote this piece yesterday, actually, and it's the title was gifted to me from the Creative Growth Poets. So how can you go wrong? Cats get high on catnip. They just do. I've been meaning to send this report for a while. I look out the window and all I see are other people's lives. Where'd mine go? But back to cats. This time I'm serious. This time I'm going to be super scientific about all of my claims. Society deserves no less. In conclusion, I'd like to tell you that the cat asleep on my lap doesn't seem impressed. She's giving me the old one eye. The trees are undulating, softly moved by unseen forces, like all of us, I suppose. I realized that it was that poem, whatever that poem is a companion piece to this poem that I wrote a while ago. The bad cat came, but I chased him away for Kate. Always and ever thus, mangy cat ass. I can see you poking around my weeds. Get out of here, goddamn cat. Like there won't be a tomorrow. Like this is the thing I'll be doing my whole lousy life. It's hot. Will I be ready in a little while? Will I be able to adjust? How long can a person recover before it becomes another form of not being? I love you though, cat. It's a new form of uncertainty. Take the best, most useless dress and tie it on your head. Maybe then the real bad cat will really drop dead. I'm going into that canyon, and you shall not know me when I return. Not all of me. Not yet. So these other 2 short pieces are also kind of companions. Evelyn Davis and Philip Greenleaf recently recorded a duo album in this very room. I like their music so much, so I was gonna say, first I wrote, like, they invited me to do the liner notes, but actually I was like, can I do the liner notes? And they very kindly said yes, so these are the liner notes. You might come to a clearing. You might stop suddenly. All around you the air is moving delicately, dark shapes at the periphery. Yes, a great delicacy of feeling. What pain and humor get when they rub at each other. Intolerable, intolerable. Beauty and... The voice sustains, the door falls hard on its hinges. Spit and fingers, a slight fluttering of panic, maroon cerise, the seriousness of leisure, Barbara Einzig says. Distance without distance, an endless room. There at the horizon, the bands of light seem to bend. No, they do bend. That slight edge of iron, how well it cuts. The wind is all around you. You are a great vibration. You feel everything so keenly. The world with little footsteps creeps. Cliffhanger. Ideas have to think it up, and who have those? Only to feel yourself run and run and run. Nothing keeps in the silent movie. The line torques. Don't lose your head now. Wait. Just a minute, where was I? A great commotion in the side cupboard, a confusion of wires and keys. You can't force it, but you keep trying. There is no try, there is only, everyone is excited to see you. You are not excited to see anyone. Go figure, we were not expected to speak plainly. Were we not expected to be lonely all this time? Night sky romance, the palm trees kiss at the drive-thru in and out by the airport. The birds are agitated, the planes of their faces are calm. Walk into the culvert by the dried-out creek. It's easy to keep momentum. Just don't stop, don't stop, don't. The hunt has caught the scent, the small warmth curled up beside you, the curtain blowing in. The flyer takes an acrobatic approach. Sorry? What? No? Maybe? I was doing this over there. Exactly with you. You. You might stop suddenly. You might come to a clearing. All around you, the air moving delicately, dark shapes at the periphery. You. The engine steadies, the sky bends over the middle ocean, so high up the air is thin it clarifies. Begin. The last short piece. John Lydecker of Negative Land gave me his new album, and he said he'd be curious to hear what I thought, and this was my response. Negative Land is playing just up the street tonight. It's always a great pleasure to collaborate with John, so I will consider this an extended range duo. I'm just sliding along on the glacier. I almost recognized you. The light is fading, and all these voices in Philip K. Dick ascendancy. First the owls died. You know. This isn't about pleasure, these rhythmical motherfuckers. Someone should murder you. Where does the drive to create go when it goes? And will I have to learn what NFTs are? Is it okay? It's what you're doing, so it's gotta be okay. I'm your neighbor. Edit the creator, that's too obvious. You're committed now. I'm your neighbor. I'm just sliding along on the glacier, you and your real human needs. Give me a break. I can almost hear you and your real human needs. I can almost. It's almost too easy. It's almost too... Nostalgia is inexorable. Running through the fields before nature was a risk, the bright green lights waiting to be held, all that space, the sky opening, lime and lavender and ink. All that you don't know can't hurt you. Now I am before you, now we can talk. I mean, be still, you and your goddamn data. You and my goddamn data. Chances are, we're all just genuinely enjoying the moment. Me and my goddamn, everything submerges. You won't see the light again. And we are immobilized, and Hollywood speaks, and I am your neighbor. It's almost too, that's a nice guitar. I thought you didn't like guitar. I like that guitar. It's almost too, enjoy it. It must be bad. Here I am again, your computer, lucky me. This doesn't ever have to end. You and your moody piano, love it, kiddo, everything else, blah, blah, blah. We are so connected. Trigger fingers. Power lines bisecting the darkening sky, the way it gets green into white before blue, just for a little background information, a little context, a way for you to decide. Give me a break. I'm a good person. I'm your neighbor. I'm a brand. In fact, it's the disappearance of public space that's the problem. Fuck privacy, Rolling along on that glacier, so to speak, voices for lonely people, connection. We're fully aware of your location at all moments, and frankly, we're getting a little tired of this juvenile resistance, or whatever you might call it. Finger triggers, what have you, your neighbor. And still the big sky, the memory of what you did, the almost sense. End of the road and etc. Buildings become more real than trees. He's dancing. He's not happy. Well, too bad. Soft targets abound. Smooth, edible flesh. Just imagine. This isn't about pleasure. It's real. It's fake. Is it okay? No one has the answers on floor 7. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. We repeat, and we are not original, and the horizon is where we shall never meet. Nonetheless, it's impressive. Just imagine the memory of what you did, the almost sense. The light has faded, and I can almost. The crowd cheers itself into exhaustion. I find myself in a new room, inevitably, as if by accident, again. It is an expanding thing, yes, again. The elevator ascends. I am your neighbor. I am just sliding and sliding and sliding along. Yes, again, yes. The breath at the end of the line. So, all right, I'm running out the clock with drive-by on the first couple of pages. This is a novella that is very much in progress. I'm writing it for Smooth Friend. It has been a total joy to work with Elizabeth Nicula. She's a dream editor. It unfolds in a somewhat elliptical manner, so it maybe isn't the best thing to excerpt. But here goes. Drive-by. It starts with a Kim Stanley Robinson quote. Something impedes the memory. There aren't the words for it, perhaps. She is thinking of the dead man. The snow is coming down. They would have been lovers. That's more specifically what she is thinking. Had they met at another time, another place? He had been much older, she would have said back then. But now she realizes this hadn't been true, isn't true. It was only his frail system, the illness patterned everywhere on its surface. So early in the year for the snow to stick. Everything became still. She is listening to Josquin des Prez, motets et chansons, the wildly mournful expression channeled with such control. It doesn't always go like that, didn't usually. Why now thoughts of this man, of this loss? It was the belated recognition of what had simmered without her even having understood it, nor recognized that she was doing anything more than being kind, being admired. Not quite kindness then, not quite passivity. Fooling him all the while fooling herself, a kid playing at grown-up affairs. The snow is already easing, going with it her flash of exultation, of this barely glimpsed possible past. Already she is editorializing. In fact, it's only his first name, Josquin, that people use. People who know him, his music, that is. There is a sharp little pain in her left breast when she breathes out, as if someone is chiseling, not too hard, with a smoldering pick. She thinks of the cries her father gives sometimes in the night. She can never tell whether they are nightmares or signs of physical distress. Perhaps they exist in some middle range. In her dreams, the bear always seems to represent latent violence. It hovers between the bears of waking day reality to the extent these exist for humans not intimate with the creatures, and those of cinematic nightmare and myth. The bear is never just hanging, let alone hanging out, as the postcard's perky script implies. It takes its time and it means business. The sinuous movement of the clarinet, the memory of it late at night in the big old house, her father madly roaming. She presses her finger into the stone, polishing and polishing the already polished rock. Yeah, she was kind of crouched down, kind of like a big crab, I mean, not the way you see a normal person typically. Normal. Yeah, we knew it was her pretty immediately. I mean, this was what, the third, fourth time? Yeah, we knew. You always have to be concerned. You never know if someone has a weapon, and if they're really unhinged, they'll make anything a weapon. But we weren't scared for us, I mean, yeah, it's a good point. She wasn't doing anything really. She was just there. Yeah, somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. I don't want to talk about it. Her mother's voice was low and strained, oddly hoarse, each word emphasized. Okay, you brought it up. I did not bring it up. Or is that another fact you're going to dispute? You told me, you asked why I didn't have the holiday spirit. I told you. She shook her head, met her mother's flinty gaze. How did they get to these places, these terrible, murky cul-de-sacs? A friend whose parents had died told her that it was important to have the difficult conversations now, while you still could. Otherwise, you were left arguing with ghosts. But what if the difficult conversations were already impossible? The living could be ghosts, it seemed to her. Worse than ghosts in their intransigence, in their ability to inflict harm. You're incredibly self-centered, her mother told her, the version of her mother that spoke to her internally. No way to answer. She looked out the window, down the sloping lawn and over to the neighbor's low fence, the overgrown fruit trees and moss-festooned firs, everything now cold and hunkered down. I have to go to work, she said, to the present, to reality. I can't be late. Okay, bye. The call blinked off, her mother always so quick on the draw. Clarice stared at the frozen face until it too disappeared. She zombied her way through the 20-minute drive, arriving to her 11 a.m. shift several minutes early. There was something satisfying about pulling into a Geno staff-only parking spot. No one could argue with her right to be there. She let the motor idle while she listened to Sting's strangled calls to Roxanne. Amazing, really, the radio stations hadn't changed at all in her lifetime. She fished around in her bag for her Brockhampton Dictionary of Classical Mythology, a pleasingly compact hardcover with a green mosaic on the dust jacket. It was almost exactly the length and width of her hand. She didn't recall how the rule had developed, but they had grown ironclad. The book could only first be opened to a random page. From there, she had to turn to pages indicated to in any see also instructions. Dr. Bennick described it as one of her most effective coping mechanisms. She turned to page 71, Demigod, See Races of Man. She thumbed to R, page 209, and was pleased to see her entry was the first for that letter. Races of man. In Greek mythology, the gods created 5 races of man, the ages in which they lived being called the 5 ages of man. The first race was a golden race, living in a golden age under the rule of Kronos. Members of this race led happy lives and died in peace, becoming on their death guardian spirits of mortals. The next race was a silver race, living in a silver age. Members of this race did not lead such good or contented lives as those of the golden age, and were so unappreciative of the work of the gods that the Olympians destroyed them. The next race was a brazen or brass race. This race did not last very long, because they were like that they were soon all killed. Next came a race of demigods, who lived in what is called the heroic age. It is this age that is most usually celebrated in Greek mythology. The War of the Seven against Thebes and the Trojan War claimed the lives of many of these, and the rest went to live a happy existence in the islands of the blessed rule over by Kronos, who by then had been deposed from Olympus. The 5th race is the present one, the Iron Race, and the worst one, with members of it leading wicked lives. Legend has it that the Iron Race will be destroyed by Zeus when babies emerge from their mother's wombs already old. Legend does not indicate whether the end of the Iron Race would be the end of mankind, the gods having given up on mortals. Thank you.
Hi, it's really nice to see all of you, and I feel really sweet about all of us getting to be here tonight. And it also feels nice to echo what everybody else has said, and that we get to spend tonight together celebrating Camille. So thank you for bringing us all together. There are a lot of places to start talking about the work that I brought in for this evening, and I think the one that makes the most sense for right now is that about 5 years ago, which is both a long and a short amount of time, I was thinking about language and the languages that I spoke and the languages that I worked in. And I realized that one of my first or foundational languages was sewing, that I'd been sewing since I was about 4. And that it was through sewing, through working with textile, that I came to all the other work that I made, that led me to collage, that led me to making film, that led me to the way that I played music. And so I wanted to get back to that foundational language and see how, what explorations of textile could bring. At the same time that I was doing this, I was also engaged in the activity of just taking snapshots of whatever it was that I was drawn to when I was on walks in my day-to-day. And like many of you, just spend a lot of time walking around. And in looking at these photos on my phone, I realized that I was taking pictures of all these moments of damage and repair and vernacular and transition and alteration. in the buildings and in the streets and in the sidewalks. And I wanted, but they are all moments that had been painted over, like moments that we, in the repair, in the getting to the other side of the transition, we like smoothed over and believed were neutral and believed that they didn't hold history. But really, if you look at the layers of paint and at the layers of patching, you can see a history written into it. You can see a story unfold. And I wanted to do another thing that people often do, which is to take a rubbing with them, to find a means of translating what I was seeing so that we could all see it, to highlight specific moments. In doing research about taking rubbings, because I wanted to do it on a large scale and I wanted it to like last, I found out that gravestone rubbers actually use fabric interfacing and they also use lithographic rubbing ink to like make their rubbings, which was nice happenstance. And I think happenstance is important. If we have just research, things get a little dry. So the happy coincidence that what is a component of sewing that is unseen, the interfacing, that adds the structure and the shape and creates the garment, could be used to reveal what we're not seeing when we walk around. And that we're also using, you also use lithographic rubbing ink, which is a component of a printmaking process that you don't ever actually see. It's a step to get to the final print. So each of these are from the mission, which is also a nice happenstance for tonight. They're of 20th and Shotwell and 24th and Valencia and the back of the new Mission Cinema. And it's nice that we have this moment together where we collapse all these spaces that we travel together into this room while we're here to listen to everyone read. So thank you.
Gosh, it's so great to just see people. I just want to say, like, the word that has come up before tonight, which is community, and the feeling for me here of community is really nourishing, and I want to take a moment to just appreciate that. So let's have a moment of silence here, okay? Well, we're just together. I see Eric over there, who is one of my Dreamboat editors. Without Eric and Lauren Levin, this book probably would not exist. Maybe I should say certainly would not exist. So it's collaborative and community effort from the get-go. And to be here in community with Claudia and ZH is feels great, just want to say, and with Anne also. Thank you, Anne. And what can I say about SPT, which has been the tireless workhorse of our poetic community for all these decades and gone through so many reincarnations and new spirits, and now led by Sid and this wonderful board is continuing to generate for us and give to us. So I just think, that I think we will get through all these crises with this in this boat. I was going to say foundation, but it's not a foundation. We are actually sailing some rough waters, and we're getting through it. So thanks for everybody who came. And I'll tell you a little bit. What I'm going to do is read both from the beginning piece and the ending piece. Okay, so the first piece in this book is called the Agatha Letters. I'm going to be reading the first two. Dear Agatha, is it all point of view? Pleasure, I mean, the surprise in the dark. I suppose it's different for everyone. To Camille, it felt empty and fresh because she was. She left words out. It wasn't only that she was new at it, sex, the business of settling into the body, the one which had arrived with its equipment of muscles and tits and hair about 6 years earlier. It felt helpless and vivid, but also sensational. A big place accented with childish gestures, a stadium. Was it possible that her body felt like a stadium? It took getting used to, which was what she was doing at her own pace, with minimal use of unfamiliar vocabulary. After dinner on the living room couch, as the roommates swirled in and out, Dusty would say it for a tease, sex. That word again, slyly reaching into Camille's ear. Camille couldn't stand it. Her fingers butterflied onto Dusty's mouth and pinned those offensive lips together. Dusty protested with a firm shove, flipping Camille off the couch. Then she fell on top, so the dumb thumbprint of her hip bone prodded Camille in the abdomen. A surge transfixed them both. Mutant permission. Girlishly, Camille threw open her legs, clasping Dusty around the shoulders. Camille felt like a slab of wetted marble, so fucking lavish. The roommate stepped over them as though ignoring evidence of the slaughter. Dusty was the whiplash who connected Camille's pieces. Camille was Dusty's little hole through which events streamed, wordless, in other words. Kisses leapt out of her throat, scribbles leaped from her fingertips. Her hand floated away from her body and covered Dusty's mouth to prevent any of those words from leaking out. 1. What Dusty said was consonant with what Dusty thought. 2. Camille was uptight about just words. 3. Dusty was a woman of action without regrets. 4. Irreconcilable differences. To get anywhere close to their state of mind, I need to empty out the story so that just the clean gestures of the young are left brittle and delicious. They're nourishing secrets. Then I could claim that nothing mattered to Camille and Dusty except their alert twist through the warm folds of an old pair of sheets, soft as lambskin. But of course that's not true. Dusty had legal problems. After the bust, her name had been on the front page of their small-town newspaper. Dusty's brother had seen the headline and called Dusty's mother, who then locked herself in the bathroom and called Dusty. I can't believe you've been a prostitute, she wailed, and broke down into bitter sobs. As a character, I want Camille to be just a little hole through which events stream, but she's never little enough. It's so awkward. Some words flare up from the page. That word whore, case in point. Push it a bit, and it opens out into fields of degradation and crime, which can't be the whole truth. How can a story be true when it's situated inside distortion? Camille was an escape artist inside language. The trick is not getting caught. This actually works well. The only problem is that you erase your past as you go. I reflected on this the other night as I was driving home past a long line of dark warehouse doors and tiny pitted alleys. By the middle of the street, I drifted into one of those states where this was the only street. The beginning and ending of all streets hung motionless around me as each instant peeled off and fluttered soundlessly into the past. Then I noticed 2 women standing at the curb. They were sheathed in gleaming bodysuits, and crimson and yellow boas were piled in snaky coils around their necks. They looked like Vegas showgirls, poised to step into a limo bigger than life, confident in their glittering details. They surprised the darkness. That complexity has always been captivating for me. It's not all the ostrich feathers at once, but each one separately that charms me. And then my brain starts to fizz. But I was driving. I had to look back at the road. The feeling had a metallic aftertaste. Otherwise, it was just synapses firing according to some schema I'd stored. It didn't add up to either pleasure or pain. Is this melancholy? Or something more inaccessible? I think of chunks of my past as pieces of brain chemistry. It accounts for how alien they feel while still being tender. They have moved entirely out of language into something else. The folds and fissures of this thing I carry around. Luggage between the ears. This story is coming from brain tissue, and that makes it alien and intimate even to me. But I'm writing it, and that means I'm taking experience through the fake death which follows artificial life. To me, writing doesn't feel like an act of imagination. It's more like the sedimentary traces of that act, a kind of cleaning up after the fact. That's all right. At least I can accept it. But then I'm stuck with the question of what gets made when words are piled together. This paragraph, for instance. I think it's a dwelling place for a sort of ghost, one who whines, craves visitors, is erotically frustrated into this eternal present, which is eternal because it never arrived in the first place. The hapless reader stumbles, turns around in confusion, then crashes through the rear exit. Reading is a kind of crashing through meaning, as the ghost is my witness. The past sags into ghostliness. I prefer syllables on account of what they do to you. Agatha, my dear reader, how they rub your eardrums like tiny rags. All those drums are so clean now. That's how we stay in touch, and I love it, at least in theory. But I'm getting away from my story. To be honest, I'm uneasy with it, especially the hunk of girl love in the middle, steaming and sweet. Camille and Dusty embarrass me. Does the world need more lesbian corn? A writer friend of mine told me, definitely not. I think he was being cruel. It wasn't a romance. It was this. Camille had risen out of teenage social death like a swamp thing, long hair in knots, her clothes still smelly. As she was still relearning how to wash, to eat, to talk, she found this girl Dusty, who had a body like a silky blade, who was paramilitary when it came to shooting off her mouth. Dusty seemed like a sheriff in an old western, who for obscure personal reasons had taken up a life of crime. Dusty brought honor to the wrong side of the law. For Camille, it was like stumbling into paradise. She had found her flowering shrub. Yours always, Camille. Dear Agatha, mostly it's boring to be a girl. You are a prisoner of your girlish appearance. You can't get outside. You are either with all the other girls, studying themselves in mirrors as they dream of devouring meat, their own excess flesh, anything to get rid of it permanently, or someone is trying to stuff something weird between your legs. It's one or the other. I was clear on this. Being a mess gave me a kind of immunity but it didn't make me stupid. Far from it. In truth, understanding roared inside me as regards the whole situation of girls, although it didn't quite trouble me because I ignored trouble even when I was in it. In my characteristically vague but stubborn way, I disregarded the situation of girls. After all, I had never been inside anything, including appearances. I was too skittish. I never said no or yes. I trembled constantly, a hungry ghost. So when I pushed open the pink door of the massage parlor and found its yellow sateen couch coated with girls, and they were wearing bright 70s loungewear and waving cheerfully at me, I leapt over the threshold. I threw myself through the door, as though to the accompaniment of timpani, a dream roll, the cacophony of hormonal triggers. It was the summer I turned 21. Some moments are perfectly lurid, but also fresh. That moment rose like a welt from its historical bed, and I fell in it. I was in love with my times, and that meant hate was interesting. Vietnam was over, but it had left residue. The mob in the street, which included everyone I knew. Anyone could join, so we did. Political life was filled with spite, and much of it came from us or our kind. Each day took place within the margin between the passing hour and imminent collapse, for that was all that many of us believed in. Even the corruptions of the state seemed exhausted. Any small act of rebellion might be the final straw. It turned private desperation into a kind of festival. I'm digressing now from the specifics of the parlor, but I want to decorate this part of my story with another one, the story of Sarah and Sand. Sarah was political in the paranoid style of the times, and Sand was younger, impressionable. Sarah became involved in a particularly fierce ideological argument, and when she lost that argument, she claimed the entire revolution for herself. She turned herself into a cause. Sand remained faithful. Really, she clung to Sarah. She became Sarah's party of one. For a few months, no meeting or demonstration could occur without Sarah and Sand, bitterly silent, striking a pose that conveyed Sarah's heroic martyrdom and Sand's abject loyalty. This was widely understood as Sarah trying to haunt us with the ghost of her leadership, and it was annoying to everyone. Then, for a few months, they were rarely seen. When Sarah surfaced, she announced that she and Sand were going to leave town in a van and travel as gypsy witch communists. This was a bit of Sarah's trickery, an example of her inclination towards subterfuge. For instead of leaving town, they wrapped themselves in toilet paper and lit it on fire. Sarah went up like a torch and died. Sand lost her nerve at the last instant and rolled frantically around on the wall-to-wall shag. Still, her ear burned off, as well as the skin on one arm. She lay in a burn bath for a month. Then she was shipped home to be cared for by her alcoholic parents. The war at home, it was luxurious, all that anger. It sprang forth everywhere, like the weeds of a wet, hot summer in Mississippi dirt. I still miss it. I believed in that anger, in its promises. I got through everything, any grueling adventure, because I was waiting for that anger to finally and completely arrive. A moment when the daily world would shimmer and crack into pieces. A broken mirror, and we would all run into the street, barking like dogs. Free at last. I couldn't separate my ideas from my bad dreams. What was a good idea? A bright skeleton gleaming through burning flesh. But that was Sarah. She had ideas. Once I dreamed that she came to my bedside, surrounded by dogs who were baying and leaping and quivering, with excitement. I can't remember if she said anything, or just looked into my sleeping face. Then they all ran off, flowing down the stairs as a pack and out into the silent street. Gone. My eyelids slid up as I felt the pressure of her image. If it weren't for loneliness, I wouldn't have fucked anyone. I didn't want to participate in anything. I wanted to just watch. I mean, Camille wanted that, and the parlor was the best place for that for her, because in the parlor, the mouth of the world and the mouths of girls were pressed unusually close together. So the girls got to trick out something precious, something which the world didn't want girls to have. Information. This is how the world works, baby. Camille wanted her life illuminated by the information which the world told her she couldn't have. And whoring was perfect, because it was like life, but more blunt. The world takes off its pants for every teenage whore. Is that real enough? Camille thought blunt meant no secrets. But she was wrong. There were plenty of secrets in the parlor, just different ones. I kind of like reading that piece with the next piece I'm going to read, because it's sort of about the same era, but from a different point of view. So I wrote this essay called Undergrid, which is really kind of a validation of obscurity and obscure communities. So I'll read this part. The obscure community. Before I was an experimental writer, I was a lesbian. I still am, but as time has passed, my sort of lesbian, who came of age in an underground community, is passing away. I have the odd sense of being out of phase with any image of lesbian identity, in part because my beginnings were, or felt like they were, outside their representational boundary. The community I entered in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the mid-1970s, was undergoing a decade of extremity. That meant it was a convergence of collectives, prostitutes, union organizers, drag shows, radicals with history in the violent parts of the weather movement, and bar life. These components combined and recombined across all boundaries to produce an ongoing show with propulsive elements of both shock and hilarity. The larger feeling was of having slipped into an exhilarating social life that I could not describe. We had collective existence in a political rhetoric, but our substance was invisible. This was partly a collective ruse for safety in a violently hostile society, but it was also structural and linguistic. The coming out narrative is supposed to make experience legible, but I have never been able to write about this period. I still cannot create sentences about the circumstances and time in which I came out. There are many conflicts and contradictions that stymie the project. Much of what happened cannot be discussed openly, despite the fact that decades had passed. Also, there were so many reversals of expectation in play that representation becomes confusing. Finally, there is the issue of how to navigate the extraordinary gap between private life, a secret community, and what is sloppily termed the world. Where was I living, if not the world? When I have tried to explore this period, I have ended up circling around the very issues that constrain my writing about it. The passage below is both a description and an enactment of this failure. It's a narrative of a past love affair during this period of extremity. In the excerpt, an effort at representation has failed, and in response, I end up examining taboo as a distortionary field. even as the writing shifts away from realism. One could say that my attempt at realistic narrative is a surrender to nostalgia, for the representational failure of realism is well known. I will not disagree with that. However, nostalgia is the vehicle through which my past has survived, and I want to touch the past lightly so as not to disturb it, especially its Jewish utopian qualities, although it was instability which made it secret and fresh. If light waves can be bent by gravity, scattered by reflectors, sucked up by the bottomless gravity of a black hole, if light can stretch or shrink time, language is bent. A taboo is a place where language deteriorates, becoming both supple and truncated. Camille's fall for Dusty sent her hurtling through the doors, butch, whore, incest survivor, into the sturdy, enigmatic presence of taboo. A taboo as presence is both everywhere and nowhere. Language bends around it. One experiences moments of hysteria as recognition seems to be slipping away. I can't believe you've been a prostitute, Dusty's mother wails into the phone. The powerful attraction of taboo is anti-linguistic. It stops meaning at the boundary. Privacy and insanity have this in common. Shared meaning drops away. So love thrust Camille inside an enigma. I write this, of course, out of nostalgia to affirm horror as enigma and abstraction. She is the one who inhabits me and who familiarizes me with the universe. Her hands probe the sheer tunnel of flesh. She shreds the weightless freedom of the abstract. To clarify this line, the powerful abstraction of taboo is anti-linguistic. It stops meaning at the boundary. The boundary I'm referring to is not individual but communal. The ability of a community to seal itself is mysterious and powerful, even if temporary. All revolutions, in values as well as governments, begin in these underground and secret spaces. This recalls a professional colleague of 20 years ago, working on a year-long software project. It eventually emerged that our parents had been communists. Mine left the party after Khrushchev's condemnation of Stalin at the 20th Congress in 1956. His parents never left the party, and they also maintained their political involvement in a secret cell for decades, until their death. They never admitted this to their son. He found out by spying on them. Light and shadow, meaning and the secret cell. As a young man, my colleague protested fiercely against the Vietnam War, but was never otherwise politically associated. I also grew up with the silences of former communists, but it came with an enveloping community. Down the block from my house, there was a house built of pale brick and tall blades of light windows. Every week, the fathers gathered there to talk politics, drink whiskey, and play poker. They were all ex-communists. Several of these men were engaged in civil rights lawsuits related to their period of communist affiliation that ran for many years. To me, these were infinite lawsuits, stretching from before my birth until after my death. I experienced them as markers of the edge of value. Beyond them was nothingness. I wandered around the house, fingering the blown glass eggs collected by our housewife. They were heavy and glistened in my palm. I picked up one after another and peered into their depths, all floating veils and orbs of bright colors. I barely listened to the men, but was enough.
Wow, that was so incredible. It's so beautiful to see. I'm just going to take in this moment where I can see everyone for a minute. So glad that we were all here to celebrate Camille's amazing honey mine and having Claudia and Zoe and Anne and all of you. So let's go to the Sycamore. That's where I'll be. Okay then.